Hello, listeners, and welcome to the latest episode of the AdQuick MAdvertising Podcast, a podcast that explores the intersection of advertising, technology, startups, all of the things that you care about. Today, I have Aditya. He is the CEO and founder of AdTech startup Awarity and has a really cool background actually on the large company side and some startups. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. And so, you also are interesting because only a few people have pitched us to be on. And so you're one of the people who asked. And I'm actually happy to say yes to anyone who shoots their shot and wants to have a discussion with us as relevant to the ad tech sector. So I love these pitches. Please, if you're listening and you want to come on and talk to myself and Chris about online ads marketing, please do so. So just to get into it, it would be great if you could give us just the really high level about your journey. I think listeners here will be really interested in hearing how you went from big company to startup founder, because I know that there are a lot of people here working at big companies that have the dream of one day doing what you're doing.
Yeah, look, I can tell you honestly, I never dreamt of being an entrepreneur. I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. It kind of just happened through this journey, and it started way back. When I always started college at Purdue, I was studying pre-medicine and chemistry. Chemistry was a major that overlapped with pre-med pretty well. And about a semester in, I was like, hey, I think I want to also have a backup in case I don't want to be a doctor. And so I switched from chemistry to chemical engineering, kept the pre-med. And thank goodness I did, because I think by my junior year, I realized I didn't really want to go to med school. And so I had a chemical engineering degree and was fortunate to get a job at Frito-Lay, part of PepsiCo, here in Texas, just north of Dallas. And what drew me to Frito-Lay was the fact that it's a market leader. It's not just that they got to number one, it's that commitment to excellence to stay number one, to make sure that everything we did was better than the competition at every touch point. And I was like, hey, I can learn something here. That's all that drew me there. I knew nothing about the industry. I never thought I would work in the industry. It's funny because people say they've got dreams about working for a company like PepsiCo. It just kind of happened. And that's what drew me there, was the learning opportunity. But it was there that I first got exposed to marketing. So I was in the R&D group developing new products. So I worked on Lay stacks, worked a little bit after Tostitos Scoops launched to help improve the shape. Did some fun things there, got a couple of patents. But during that time, I got to attend focus groups and work with the brand team. So we'd see how consumers interacted with product. I'd start asking them questions. And what drew me in is it was the intersection at PepsiCo, is the intersection of consumer strategy, financial strategy, business strategy, competitive strategy, product strategy. All of it kind of came together in one spot. And that pulled me in, just this concept of being able to learn and knowing that you'll never be good enough. There's no one right answer, and there's always ways to improve. And that was just personally appealing to me. So you start to see a theme on things that draw me. So much so that I moved to Chicago, worked at Quaker R&D, and got my MBA at Northwestern, and then came back to Frito-Lay and joined the brand marketing group. So I got to work on brands like Cheetos and Cracker Jack and the baked portfolio, and that's where I really learned to cut my teeth in marketing. So there were two big experiences during my time on the marketing side that really inform what I'm doing today. The first is when I was on the Cheetos brand, we ran what's called a marketing mix analysis. So we had a vendor. We put everything in that we were running from a marketing standpoint, included pricing, merchandising, competitive activity, innovation, new product launches, TV, digital, everything we did, put it into a model. The model spit out a coefficient for every one of those things on how it contributed to the brand's sales that year. And it was a smarter way to do things. This was over 10 years ago. And so it felt really smart and intelligent that we're making data-based decisions. But I think the engineer in me got the better of me. And I wasn't quite satisfied with the way the model was run. So I asked them to rerun it, but to look at the interaction of variables. And so we looked at what happens. We couldn't run it for all combinations. But as an example, what happens when you run TV at the same time that you have merchandising in store, at the same time that you have some pricing promotion happening? And what we saw is the lift we experienced was much higher than the sum of each of those coefficients. And it tells you something really important that we believe at Awareness, and is really the thesis for why I started Awareness, that is customers buy on their own journey. And it's the culmination of all those marketing touch points across the 4Ps, across your advertising and communication strategy, that ultimately gets people from awareness to purchase, even for a brand like Cheetos. So everybody knows what Cheetos are, but you're sitting at home, you're watching TV, you see a Cheetos commercial, it just reminds you it's orange, it's playful, it's messy, it's these odd shapes. But what you really feel is that when you have Cheetos, you feel like a kid again. And you don't think that literally, but it's the emotion, it's the verbal-less emotion that you feel when you see that commercial. And it plants this thought of, wow, I feel like a kid when I eat Cheetos. So it's in the back of your mind. Then you go to the grocery store, you see it on a merchandising unit, and you notice it because you were thinking about it. You're more apt to notice the merchandising. Oh, I was just thinking of Cheetos. Then you see it's on sale and you pick the bag up. And every purchase decision we make is the culmination of multiple touch points, from awareness to consideration through to purchase. And that example really embodied, I think, something very important in advertising that candidly the industry is losing sight of today. So I left PepsiCo. I got hired by a private equity group to run a startup. And it was a startup targeted to small business for commercial insurance. And so I was looking for niche advertising strategies. And I thought, hey, I'm going to apply this PepsiCo playbook and have multiple touch points as we try to build this new brand. But what I found is there really were not any efficient and effective solutions to build that awareness, particularly with the budgets we had at that time. And that leads back to the second key experience at PepsiCo, is programmatic advertising. I became really intrigued with how this worked. Programmatic advertising is the ads you see on websites every day. 92% of Americans are on websites. 2/3 of our time connected online is actually browsing websites and website content. So the ability to reach people is unprecedented with banner ads. But the industry had high costs. There wasn't a lot of standardization. People got mixed bag results, and it never got the level of adoption that it should have. But I used programmatic advertising on a couple of trial campaigns on brands I was working on, and we had tremendous success. So I wanted to bring that in when I was at this startup. I said, hey, this is a way we could target small businesses and small business owners with this insurance product. But I ran into the same problems. It was expensive. I wasn't quite satisfied with the quality. The reporting wasn't great. And candidly, it inhibited our ability to build the brand awareness we needed to reach those small businesses. And so I parted ways with that private equity firm after about 6 months, started this business. And our focus is to make world-class advertising accessible to everyone. The thought was, if we can help these small businesses advertise locally using automation so that you don't have to keep hiring people, so you can keep the price point affordable, but then use AI-based optimization to ensure we're optimizing the campaigns without automation in a way that no human buyer can match, we'd have an advantage solution. So take a small local restaurant. They may only want to advertise in 2 or 3 zip codes around where they're located. Programmatic advertising is well suited to that. And that was really the foundation of Awareness. And I started the business in 2016. We didn't really start scaling up till 2018. And this past year, we were named 2,399 on the Inc. 5000.
That's awesome. And I love the journey, especially you're kind of a unique case because not a lot of people tend to go from the product side to the marketing and to the creative side. And I think because you've seen both, I think there's like this natural itch for you to say, look, marketers are good at this, but they're not great at that. And, from a product perspective, I could probably build something to help them. To your point about helping SMBs, I think SMBs don't know what they're doing with online marketing. So, anyone who's building a tool that's like going to use AI or automation or whatever smarts you can do to help them get from uploading ads to the system to getting them in front of the right user is definitely worth the time, because even if they do know about online marketing, right, they're busy. So any tools that can help them achieve this faster are obviously very important. So when you are helping a small business customer, I'm curious, you mentioned insurance. How do you strike a balance for your users between, if you're a small business, I don't know that you think about brand versus performance. I think you're just thinking about, okay, I'm online and I need money, right? So do you help them in the product, or do you have a bit of an ethos of how you think about how a small business should go to market, and maybe what % is brand for a small business and what percent is performance? I'm curious if you've thought about this at all.
Yeah, look, I think first and foremost, it's all one and the same, because every purchase decision is made by some kind of a trigger. So if you're buying a car, there's a trigger that says, hey, I need a new car. Either you're not satisfied with your current car, you had a life stage change, it's breaking down, whatever that might be, there's a trigger. And the first thing we think about after that trigger happens are the brands we have awareness of. But the reason people don't invest in it, to your point, and the reason why people like to think performance marketing is it's not as trackable. So we address that in our platform with a couple of things. One is we're very transparent in the sales process. We say our goal is to get new people to your website. That's seeing the ad, not necessarily clicking. Very few people actually click ads. Seeing the ad and finding your website, and that's something we're going to report to you. And candidly, the methodology for reporting is going to underreport the true impact. So much so, we've got some new product features coming that are going to model off of Google Analytics and show them maybe a more accurate representation of the impact we're having. But we say, if you're okay with new people to your website, but it's also an affordable and efficient price point, then this is good for you. But if you need a guarantee on more than that, we can't guarantee that. And we give examples, like we work with a lot of minor league baseball teams, and they all see different ROIs in terms of, we're able to track with pixels how many people that saw the ad bought tickets. One team could be heavy on digital tickets, one team may not. And the team that does a lot more walk-up sales is going to show a lower ROI. It may not mean we didn't have a huge impact. Maybe one of them said we had record attendance. We just sold a lot of walk-ups this year. And so they were smart enough to say, no, we added this advertising. We saw a lot more walk-ups. We're attributing it to your campaign, but there's no digital tool to track that one-to-one. Another team their stadium may be in a less desirable part of town, or maybe their game day experience isn't quite as good. Those aren't things we can control for in the purchase process. So we educate our clients first and foremost. We say, we can get new people to your site. The impact it has on your business is going to vary dramatically based on the strength of your 4 Ps.
And I want to shift gears a little bit, because I want to get back to small businesses, but we have all types of marketers listening to us. And one thing you're kind of uniquely qualified to answer is a lot of marketers that we have listening are actually trying to sell into large brands like Pepsi. And I'm curious, from your position as, previous part of the corporate team, do you want to offer any marketers that are listening any tips or best practices or whatever's on your mind for, if I was a marketer selling, whatever I might be selling into a large business, and it's, a big, longer B2B sales cycle, how I should think about, my approach these days, and what is on the minds of the corporate marketer right now?
Well, look, I think first and foremost, you got to be patient. Big companies are going to move at their own pace, and it's never going to go as fast as you want. I think secondly, use your network. It's kind of like getting a job to a degree. You're much more likely to get a job if somebody within the company is vouching for you and bringing your resume up. Same thing. Look at your network. Look at the people you went to school with. Look at the people you've worked with in the past. See where they are, and see if there's somebody that's willing to champion you and help you get your foot in the door, just to get that start. And then the third is, do a lot of discovery. Find out what their pain points are. When you have those conversations, it's important. Yeah, I think we're so eager to pitch about what we do. It's important to catch about what the pain points of those brands are. And look, this is advice I try to work on myself when we're talking to bigger companies, because our automation is being utilized by bigger companies as well now.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because there's definitely a certain type of marketer who I would say very much on the digital side, who's like, no, I have, my product can do this. Here are the features and benefits. I should just be able to sell on that. And you're saying something different. You're saying, look, you're going to have to network your way in or form that relationship first, and don't skip that part. So I think that's probably good advice for, I guess, the pure performance plays, like the pure SEOs out there who think, look, I'm just going to have the best page, rank for this thing, and it's going to rain leads for me, and I'm going to grow to $1 billion company. I think that was maybe true at one point. on the internet when you were first to certain solutions, like, you know, you were the first cloud provider, the first CRM provider, whatever, and there was like so much alpha for just, you know, being the provider of something early. And at this stage in SaaS in particular, where there's now like there's probably like not just 10, but probably 100 solutions to do any one thing, that you kind of have to do the more traditional B2B sales. You can't just show up with your solution.
Right.
So that's interesting advice. In terms of online ads, so I think this is probably more of a concern for larger companies, but I'm sure smaller companies ask this to you as well. What is sort of the state of online user privacy, data protection, even things like ad fraud? How are people not really asking you that? Because I guess smaller businesses are just like, look, we're okay with a little bit of waste. We just need to reach people. Is this something you hear concern or anxiety about from users regularly, or not really?
We're not hearing a ton about it because look, there's laws coming into play that dictate that. We're not using first party data unless the client has approval for that, and then they're segmenting their list, and we're simply serving them ads. It's just going to be a more relevant ad based on their profile, and we don't know anything more than that, other than just what segment they're in. So, and as far as fraud, you know, I think at the end of the day, we're able to show some downstream impact, whether it's on the sports side, ticket sales, whether it's for other clients, just new people to the website. There are other KPIs, and we've developed our own tools to avoid that. It's generally, there is fraud avoidance as a pre-bid solution. There's vendors out there, they vet what is the bot traffic on websites. They create lists of sites that meet those standards. And then above and beyond that, we use multiple vendors. And then above and beyond that, we're at the top tier DSP. And then above and beyond that, we're looking at our own metrics too and optimization as well. And so we're not seeing a ton of questions because I think candidly our clients are seeing a huge increase in their website traffic. And so they're really happy about that. And the ones that have some kind of a sales and marketing process in place, they're seeing it accelerate their business.
So I have to ask you this question because every marketer in the world has an opinion on it. What's your take on how AI is going to impact advertising and marketing work? Because no one doesn't have an opinion on what's going to happen.
Yeah, you know, I don't think anybody knows yet. And the analogy that I like to use is, and this is going to age me, but when the internet started to emerge. So like if you go back to the 90s, you know, people knew the internet was coming and was going to change life as we know it. And it was this big idea. But that's what it was a big idea. If you look back, the people and the businesses that became exceptionally successful as a result of it found a very specific use case where the internet was a tool to make consumers' lives better. Whether that's Jeff Bezos trying to create the everything store, realizing that the web could open up shopping and distribution possibilities that hadn't been imagined before. He focused just on books and then eventually expanded. You look at even AOL. AOL just said, hey, we're just going to focus on access. We don't know what all this is going to be. We're just going to focus on access and solve that problem. That AOL became a massive business for a period of time and then went away. So it's about finding the use case. Spotify. How do you use it to provide access, infinite access to music? The businesses that thrive found a use case, and then the technology was a tool versus saying, hey, I've got this tool, let's figure out how big it can be. It's about, here's a consumer problem, and here's a way that we can use the tool to solve that consumer problem. I think the same thing in AI. So when it comes to marketing, the hardest part is people make decisions based on emotion, and then they rationalize it after. And AI, the premise of AI is that it's reading a signal. How are you going to read how people are feeling? And so you have to give certain things time. Like I'll give you an example. I could have AI develop the ideal ad for a vacuum cleaner for you and show you that ad 4 times this month. And you're going to see it, and it's going to have a feature in there that really sticks because you're like, man, I wish I had that feature. And you're just going to be thinking about it. But you're not going to buy the vacuum cleaner because you just bought one last year. And it's working perfectly fine. And so you're not in the market for a new vacuum cleaner, but it kind of made you want that new feature. So then fast forward 18 months, your current vacuum cleaner breaks you're left with a choice. Do I get it fixed? I'm out of warranty, or do I buy this one that I've been thinking about for 18 months? And you buy it, and you bought it because there was a perfect ad you were shown 18 months ago. There's no attribution model that's going to give you that credit.
Yep.
That's how we buy. And so how is AI going to uniquely solve that? You're going to have to give things time. I think people think AI just means fast and instant. Some things are just going to require time, but I think using it as a tool to automate certain things that you generally require humans and judgment to do, like reading ad effectiveness, with the right constructs and the right time and the right testing methodologies, you can get indications and it can help optimize. And I think the future is limitless. I think what I'll be curious is, what are the close-in use cases that really emerge? Like, you see people building businesses around ChatGPT now, and see what happens with those, and then what happens when the next disruptive cycle occurs. The last thing I'll leave on AI is, for the majority of our lives, the computing power was way ahead of what the software dictated, just generally speaking, in most use cases. Today, we're at a point where the software actually needs more computing power than what a lot of processors can provide. And you're seeing the costs of running these AI algorithms is very expensive in the cloud. And that's going to be a factor that has to get adjusted, because computing power is not accelerating at the same rate that it has been. And I kind of wonder if there's going to be some Darwinism on the use cases that really are able to utilize it when you start thinking about a long-term sustainable business.
Yeah, it's also bullish AWS and bullish NVIDIA, and the railroad tracks of the internet and all of the data centers. So
Yeah.
it will be interesting to see what happens there. You mentioned attribution, which I love that you mentioned. Someone sees an ad and then how dare they buy it, a year later or 18 months later, and it's not tracked in your ad tool. How dare that consumer not follow my path as a marketer that I sort of laid out? So if you are a marketer, whether you're using your team software or any other software, can you maybe give some words of wisdom for how a marketer should think about attribution, how they should educate their team about how their investments work together? You also mentioned, when you were at Pepsi, how the team at Pepsi is sophisticated and attributes and credits all of these different conversion paths. And I think a frustration for a lot of really well-meaning and good quality marketers is they just don't do a good job of educating their internal teams about all those interactions. And then the user, doesn't follow that path and, maybe makes a purchase outside, I saw an ad or I saw a social update, and then I went to Google and searched and then made a conversion there. So it seems like this perpetual problem that can never be solved perfectly, but what can marketers do better?
No, it's a really important question. I think sometimes I honestly have an adverse reaction when I hear the word performance marketing, because you're implying you can get people to do something that they don't necessarily want to do. The customer, to me, the path to growth is embracing, and the path to sure, all things should be measured, all things should be assessed for long-term impact. There's two pieces of advice that I give people on this. One is, embrace the customer journey. Don't fight it. If they're taking a different path to purchase than you want them to, there's a reason for that. And embrace their path, because there are steps they need to go through in their own way before they get the purchase. Sure, over time, you can try to optimize certain things, but it all should be in the vein of trying to make their life easier, trying to make their choices easier. Not about, hey, I need to put $1 in and make $1.50 tomorrow. That's the first. And then the second is, look at this data, look at your performance at a macro level. Look at it over time, because you have to be realistic about your purchase cycle from awareness to purchase, and how long does that take? People buy a car on average every 4 years. So you have to give any kind of advertising communication strategy some length of time to see how effective it is. And it can't be a month, and it can't be 2 months on a 4-year purchase cycle. And we're in this world now where everybody wants to measure everything. Everybody wants everything to be instant. And it's a really hard lesson to follow. But it goes back to, if your business is consumer centric, It's about providing your consumers, your customers value and making their life just a little bit better. Your marketing plan should be in lockstep with that. And they should be able to engage with your product the way that they want to, not the way you wish they did.
The 4-year, but consumers buy a car every 4 years is an interesting stat. I had not heard that before, but I guess it kind of makes sense.
Right.
Trade-ins and whatnot. I'm curious, do you have a favorite auto manufacturer and favorite auto industry, auto company marketing that does marketing well?
Whew. I love cars, so I could go on about cars for a long time. I'll give a couple of examples. I love what Ferrari's done, and I know that's not an attainable brand for most, including myself. But like what they've done is you can't just go buy a Ferrari. Like you have to get approved, and if you could get listed where you're not allowed to buy a car if you make certain modifications, change the color, wrap it, whatever. Like they have a whole list of criteria for getting your first Ferrari, and you have a much more likelihood of getting it if you buy a pre-owned one and then go to the dealer. So they don't advertise, they don't sell. You can go get on a waiting list and get your car after a year built to the spec they tell you, and then if you earn it, you could get a future one. So it's almost like this thing of not anybody can buy it. I think they even have a rule, now don't hold me on this, but I've heard this, that if you own a Lamborghini, you can't buy a Ferrari, as
Oh,
an
wow.
example.
That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I heard this recently somewhere. I've not double checked it, but it's almost like a brand that's putting restrictions on purchase, yet they're selling everything they can make. So there's something they've done there to enable that. A brand that I really like what they do in advertising is BMW. They stick to this notion of the ultimate driving machine. It's all about performance. It's all about road feel. And everything they do in their ethos is about that. Even if they have luxury features, it's all about being the ultimate driving machine. So that consistency of brand identity, I think, is really powerful. You contrast that a little bit with Audi, where sometimes they'll talk about performance, sometimes they'll talk about technology, sometimes they'll talk about luxury. And you're not always quite sure where they sit on that spectrum. And then, if you're an auto enthusiast, then you wonder, hey, are they the best at any of those if they're talking about doing all of them? Whereas, with BMW, it's the ultimate driving machine. We can all recite that phrase.
Yeah,
And so I think that it's the consistency of message that I really admire that they've done.
I think that's right. And I also think if you're like the small companies that are consistent with their marketing and figure out a good tagline, I think those are the ones that can ultimately become larger companies. I think you have to be known for something first. You said it really well about Audi trying to boil the ocean. And as you said that, you're right. I'm like, what is Audi's tagline? Like I couldn't tell you, but I could tell you BMW's. But my mother actually has a BMW. So they're doing some good marketing if they reach her. Cool. So another thing that's sort of happening is there seems like there's a whole new world with advertising. While people watch TV, they're on Instagram or TikTok on their phones. There's sort of a little bit of an ad fatigue online. From a creative standpoint, what do you do as an advertiser to really stand out? Or does the targeting and the intent matter that much more, and the creative just has to be good enough? I'm curious what you advise your clients there.
So look, we include animated creative with every banner ad campaign. And the reason we include it is creative matters just as much as targeting. We're exposed to 4,000 to 6,000 ads a day on average.
It's wild.
And there's no way we remember even a fraction of them. But the ones we do remember are the ones that are simple and they're relevant to us. They're relevant to some pain point we're experiencing and relatable. And so some filters we like to put creative we put together for a client are, first and foremost, if we swapped that client's logo and colors out and put their competitor in, could we run the same ad? Yes or no? The second is, are we highlighting that one thing that makes them different from all other choices in a succinct manner? And then number three is, are we presenting that in a way that it matters to their customer? And that's not just words. That can be visual. That could be animation. It's what's the emotion we're trying to evoke around that brand. Because if somebody can scan something, not think, and then feel something, that's effective creative. And that part is just as important as the targeting.
Cool. And then I want to ask another question for other founders listening, because we certainly do have a lot of people who found companies. I'm curious, and can you give just 2 or 3 lessons that you've learned from an entrepreneur building a tech company, getting users, getting from the sort of 0 to 1 situation where you're at, where you're actually now producing case studies and you actually have some success behind you.
Yeah.
Can you share some wisdom for young people listening who are looking at you and are like, I want to replicate that?
Yeah. I think a couple of things. The private equity firm I worked for on the startup, it was run by a pretty successful value investor named Monish Pabrai. And what I learned through him was this notion of managing your investments to ensure success. So like the notion of value investing is, where is the book value of a company higher than the trading price? And therefore there is inherent value to be had that'll be realized as the market is efficient. Over time, you realize it. Same thing here. When it comes to tech, and actually before I jump to that example, he told me a story. He made his initial fortune bootstrapping an IT consulting firm. And then after that, he tried to start another business and he raised a lot of money. And he said that business failed after 18 months. And he said it wasn't resource scarce. You need the discipline of being resource scarce. So that really stuck with me. And so thinking about when it's technology in particular, once you code something, changing it is very expensive. And if you've spent the money on it, you need to realize a return quickly. So one of the things we've done, I'll give you an example of like our customer reporting as a very tangible example of it, is we've built, when we realized we needed the efficiency and could recognize some kind of immediate return to our business on that. So version 1 of our campaign reports was me and my cousin, who was interning with us, typing numbers into a spreadsheet from the ad platform, double checking them, converting it to a PDF and sending it. Version 2 was we had another intern. He wrote a script. Actually, no, version 2 was we automated a data dump of all campaign performance and then automatically filled out the spreadsheet. Version 3 is we had another intern write a script through Outlook that would send all of these reports and attach the right PDF to them. So these were all things that were just slow code things to do piece by piece. Then we crashed Outlook because we're sending so many, and Outlook can only send so many emails at once, that we built a truly coded email that pulled in campaign performance. Then we outgrew that because the spreadsheet was getting too big that we had to upload, to where we built version 1 of our dashboard, which was around a Power BI shell. And I mentioned that because you mentioned you have a lot of tech listeners. It's around a Power BI shell. So there's a lot of no code development work to be done to prove it. That gave us a better handle on the features clients valued, what they liked, what made us stand apart. Also gave us a lens on what features they didn't use and we didn't know to codify, to now we're in our own natively built Angular reporting system with our own fully automated backend cloud system. But we built to that point, going from me filling out a spreadsheet, converting it to a PDF, to this. And along the way, we were able to hone customer requirements. How do we stand apart from the competition? What matters to them? And we only codified it when we knew it was going to save us time or give the customers a better experience that differentiated us.
Awesome. So I'm curious, how did you start marketing your own startup? What was like you did? What was it you started doing to get early users and get traction?
First thing was just our own network. So our first batch of customers came from me talking to people I knew, my wife talking to some people she knew, and then they maybe introed us to people they knew. Then we gave that about a year before we started to scale up. And I took up a job at Capital One actually for a year during that time period as I kept this going nights and weekends. And then when we saw our customers were happy, we felt like we had a better understanding of the value proposition, and we saw a line of sight to scaling it. Then we joined the local Frisco Chamber of Commerce. We networked there. We grew our customer base there. We used a lot of networking, and it really wasn't until the pandemic that we started embracing in a bigger way advertising our own brand and investing in SEO, SEM, our own banner ads, our own customer journey to get people to our site and enroll. And then now we have a sales team. They focus on larger opportunities, while our advertising focuses on more the small businesses. Our advertising SEO focuses on small businesses.
Awesome. So for our final question, can you share where we can find you online, where we can learn more about your startup, how we can get connected to you to stay in touch?
Yeah. Visit us anytime at awarity.com, AWARITY. You could request a demo, and during that demo, we can learn about your business and tell you what's possible or not possible in terms of targeting potential customers and serving them precision targeted ads. And for your listeners, if they're interested in a marketing assessment, they can go to awarity.com/thegift, and we'll perform a free marketing assessment. They just answer a few questions, and we'll provide them an assessment of how their marketing is working and what recommendations we have. We'll be the first to tell people if they are very, very new, maybe they should invest in more bottom funnel, like the paid search, like the SEO, like the email, like the Chamber of Commerce, like we went to, just to get those first customers where people have to meet you, see you. And then as you start to see those patterns and you start to get scale, it makes it a little more palatable and easier to start investing in some true advertising.
Awesome. Well, it's been great chatting and getting to know you. For everyone else, please, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm still doing the YouTuber thing. And for everyone else, feel free to share today's episode with your friends. You'll join us again next week, where we will feature more entrepreneurs doing very cool things. Thank you so much.